What would you do if your love was called a crime? A 71-year-old woman dedicated the last 13 years of her life to raising the 3 grandchildren her daughter abandoned. She was their entire world. But then, the daughter returned, not to say thank you, but to punish. In a single morning, this elderly mother was locked away in a nursing home by her own daughter, stripped of everything. It didn't stop there. In front of a judge, she stood up and called her a kidnapper. From a beloved grandmother, she was suddenly an accused criminal in the eyes of the law. Can the truth prevail when your accuser is your own flesh and blood? Follow along with this story here on Deepu Cater Stories. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments what city you're listening from. The White Walls and the Ghost of the Past. My name is Clara Thorne. I am 71 years old. My daughter, Cynthia, number side, it's not 5 locked me in this nursing home 3 weeks ago. She told the doctors my mind was broken. A tangled mess of old wires and forgotten memories. Then, she stood before a judge and told him I was a kidnapper. Her court date. The one to decide if I am legally competent. The one to decide if I will ever go home again. Is next month. Until then, I am here. In this room that doesn't feel like a room at all. It feels like the inside of a box. The walls are white, not a warm, welcoming white, like the cream-colored walls of my kitchen back home. Walls that have absorbed decades of laughter and the smell of baking bread. No, this is the color of bone. Sterile. Cold. The only sound is the low hum of the air conditioner. A constant, lonely whisper that never stops. Day or night. Sometimes, when the silence gets too loud, I press my ear against the plaster, just to feel the vibration. Just to know something in this place is still moving, still alive. My daughter, the one I gave life to, says this is for my own good. She visits on Tuesdays. She brings flowers, usually carnations, that have no scent, and arranges them in a cheap glass vase on the windowsill. She sits in the hard plastic chair by the window, the afternoon sun making a halo of her carefully colored hair. She holds my hand, her fingers cool and smooth against my wrinkled skin, and tells me she loves me. Her voice is soft, practiced. Then, when the nurse comes in to check my blood pressure, Cynthia will lean in and whisper. She was having one of her episodes this morning, talking about the past again, the story. Her face will be a perfect mask of concern. The story, the one where she abandoned her 3 children on my doorstep 13 years ago. The one where I found them, cold and hungry and scared, their little faces streaked with dirt and tears. The one where I took them in, raised them, and loved them with every broken piece of my heart. Cynthia calls this my delusion, my invention. She calls it kidnapping. It's a word so ugly, so violent. It feels like broken glass in my mouth every time I think it. Kidnapper, a word for monsters on the nightly news. Not for a grandmother whose greatest crime was loving too much. It's funny. You know, the world talks about the bonds between a mother and child. A sacred, unbreakable thing. But they never tell you what happens when that bond is used as a weapon. When the child you raise becomes your jailer. Before this white room, there was my home, my life, my garden, where my roses grew wild and beautiful. But most of all, there were my grandchildren. Michael, my steady boy, now 22. He has my husband's quiet strength. He's the one who would show up just to mow my lawn, never asking for a thing. Liv, my gentle artist, 19. She's the one who would sit with me on the porch swing for hours, just talking, on her head on my shoulder. And Ava, my little firecracker, 17. She's the one who would fill the house with her loud music and her even louder laughter. They were my reason for getting up in the morning, for tending the garden, for cooking big Sunday dinners. They were the noise and the joy and the muddy footprints on my clean kitchen floor. I raised them. It wasn't a delusion. It was my life. The very best part of it. I suppose I should have seen it coming. The real storm. I mean, my memory isn't what it used to be. I know that. I'm 71 years old. Sometimes I'll walk into a room and forget why I'm there. I'll misplace my keys. The doctor called them senior moments. A gentle, dismissive phrase. Cynthia, she calls them evidence. She came back on a Tuesday. The air thick and heavy with unspoken rain. 13 years without a single word. And then she was just there, standing on my porch. A stranger wearing my daughter's face. She looked tired, worn down by a life I knew nothing about. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. A hardness in her posture I didn't recognize. She cried. Oh, how she cried. She said she was sorry. She said she was sick back then. Lost in a fog of depression she couldn't see her way out of. She said she wanted to make things right. To be a mother to her children. She lied. Her tears were a performance. Her sorrow was a key, crafted with 13 years of silence to unlock my door, my pity, my home. I looked at her. And for a fleeting moment, I didn't see the woman standing before me. I saw the little girl who used to scrape her knee and run to me for comfort. I am a mother, and that, I'm learning, is a weakness you carry with you to the grave. I stepped aside, and I let the storm in. The cracks in memory. Cynthia moved into the guest room. She said it would only be for a little while, just until she got back on her feet. The first few days were strange. She moved through my house like a ghost, touching things, her fingers tracing the frames of the photographs on the mantelpiece. She was polite, quiet. She offered to help with the dishes, to cook supper. I said no. Cooking was my job. The kitchen was my space. I watched her with the children. Michael kept his distance, his shoulders tense whenever she was in the room. He answered her questions with single word. Yes. No. Fine. Ava ignored her completely, putting on her headphones the moment Cynthia tried to speak to her. Only Liv, my sweet, tender-hearted Liv, she tried. She asked Cynthia about her life, where she'd been. She listened. I saw the hope in Liv's eyes, and it made my own heart ache. But it was with me that Cynthia focused her attention. It began with small things. Innocent things. My reading glasses would disappear. I always kept them on the little table beside my armchair. One morning, they weren't there. I searched the whole living room, my frustration growing. My mind felt foggy. I just saw them. I'd murmur to myself. Then Cynthia would walk in, a bright smile on her face. Looking for these, Mama, she'd say, pulling them from behind a sofa cushion. You're getting so forgetful. She'd say it with a little laugh, a gentle tease. But her eyes were watchful, cold. It happened again with my favorite gardening trowel. Then the book I was reading, each time. After a fruitless search that left me feeling flustered and confused, Cynthia would find it in some strange place. Oh, Mama. She'd sigh, shaking her head fondly. You put it in the pantry again. Did I? I couldn't remember. I couldn't be sure. A seed of doubt began to sprout in the back of my mind. A cold, creeping vine. Was I really getting that bad? Then came the little tests. We'd be sitting on the porch, and she'd ask me, out of the blue, Mama, do you remember the name of that teacher I had in 3rd grade? The one with the red hair? I'd search my memory. The name was on the tip of my tongue, a hazy shape I couldn't quite grasp. Mrs. something. Mrs. Gable, no. That wasn't it. I'd see a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye and realize she was holding her phone, the screen facing me. The camera was on, recording. My mouth would go dry. The pressure to remember, to prove I was still myself, would make my mind go completely blank. I can't recall right now. Honey. I'd say, my voice tight. She'd immediately put the phone down, her face a mask of sympathy. Oh, that's okay. Mama, don't you worry about it. It's not important. She would reach over and pat my hand, her touch feeling less like comfort and more like a scientist handling a specimen. She was collecting data, building her case. I noticed a change in Olivia. My sweet Liv started watching me, too. One afternoon, she came into the kitchen while I was making tea. Grandma, she said, her voice soft and hesitant. Cynthia told me she's worried about you. She said you left the stove on the other day. I stared at her, I had no memory of that. I was always so careful with the stove. I didn't. I said, a little too sharply. Liv flinched. Okay, she whispered, backing away. I was just checking. After that, I felt her eyes on me. If I paused for a moment in the hallway, she'd ask if I was all right. If I misplaced the TV remote, I'd see a flicker of worry cross her face. Cynthia had planted the seed of doubt in Liv's mind, and it was beginning to take root. She was turning my own granddaughter into another one of her witnesses. It was a cruel kind of cleverness. A poison dripped slowly, day by day. The breaking point, for me, came on a Thursday evening. The children were out. It was just me and Cynthia in the house. I was tired. My hip was aching, and I just wanted a quiet evening. I was in my room, looking for my bank card to order a new gardening book online. I couldn't find it in my purse. I checked my drawers, the nightstand, nothing. A familiar wave of panic started to rise in my chest. Cynthia appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? Mama, I can't find my bank card, I said, my voice trembling with frustration. Oh, honey, she said. Walking over, she opened my jewelry box. A little wooden thing Michael had made for me years ago. And there it was, sitting right on top of a string of pearls. I stared at it. I never, ever put my bank card in my jewelry box. It made no sense. It was impossible. My heart started to pound. This wasn't a slip. This was wrong. See, Cynthia said gently. You just put it somewhere for safekeeping and forgot. It happens. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see a daughter. I saw a stranger with cold, calculating eyes. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I crept out of my room to get a glass of water. As I passed the guest room, I heard her voice. A low murmur through the closed door. I leaned closer. She was on the phone. I know, she was saying, her voice impatient. It's taking longer than I thought. She's tougher than she looks. No, I'm getting it all. Every time she forgets something, every time she gets confused. Almost there. Just need a little more proof. Proof. The word hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. It wasn't my mind that was broken. It was a plan, a deliberate, cruel plan. She wasn't here to heal. She was here to hunt, and I was the prey. The door clicks shut. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because the garbage truck had just rumbled down the street. I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing my coffee cup, watching a blue jay peck at the bird feeder outside. The house was quiet. The kids were at school. It was a perfectly ordinary morning. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't a friendly ring. It was sharp, insistent. I dried my hands on my apron, a familiar sense of dread coiling in my stomach, a feeling I'd grown used to ever since Cynthia had come back into our lives. When I opened the door, there were two of them, a man in a cheap suit and a woman with a tired face and a clipboard. They weren't smiling. Clara Thorne, the woman asked. Her voice was flat. Official. Yes, I said, my hand tightening on the doorknob. We're from Adult Protective Services, the man said, holding up a badge. We have a court order to perform a wellness check and evaluation. May we come in? It wasn't a question. It was a command. My mind went blank. Wellness check, court order, the words didn't make sense. They floated in the air like smoke. Behind them, on the sidewalk, I saw a car. And in the passenger seat was Cynthia. She didn't look at me. She just stared straight ahead. A statue carved from ice. They stepped inside, into my home. They walked on my rugs and breathed my air. The woman started asking me questions. My name, my age, the date. Did I know who the president was? Did I know where I was? Her pen scratched against the paper on her clipboard with every answer I gave. I felt like a bug under a magnifying glass. Mrs. Thorne, she said, her tone softening just a little. A professional sort of pity. Your daughter, Cynthia Blackwood, has filed a petition for emergency guardianship. She's expressed serious concerns about your cognitive state and your ability to care for yourself and your grandchildren. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. My daughter, I couldn't finish the sentence. She's worried you're a danger to them, the man added, his eyes scanning my living room, my family photos, as if looking for signs of a crime. And then Cynthia walked in. The front door had been left open. She walked in as if she owned the place. Her face was a perfect mask of sorrow. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying for days. It was a masterful performance. She came to me. She tried to take my hand. I pulled away. "I'm so sorry." "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking just enough for the social workers to hear. "This is for the best. I promise. We'll get you the help you need." Help. The word was a lie. A cruel joke. The school bus rumbled to a stop at the end of the street. I heard their voices before I saw them. Ava's laugh, sharp and clear. Leave's softer tones. Michael's car pulled up, right behind the bus. They were home. My heart seized in my chest. "No. Not now. Please. God." Not in front of them. They walked in and stopped dead in the hallway. Their faces confusion. Then fear. Then a dawning horror. "What's going on?" Michael asked, his voice low and steady. But I could see the panic in his eyes. He stepped in front of me. "A shield. It's all right. Honey." The woman from social services said, "We're just here to help your grandmother. Help her with what." Ava's voice was sharp. "She doesn't need any help." Cynthia stepped forward. "Kids, listen to me. Grandma isn't well." "You liar," Ava screamed, her face contorting with rage. "You did this. It all happened so fast then." The woman explained they were taking me for a mandatory 72-hour evaluation at a facility. Evaluation. Another clean, sterile word for what was really happening. They were taking me away. From my home, from my children. Michael pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he tried to dial a number. "A lawyer. Maybe. I don't know." Liv just stood there, tears streaming down her face, her hand reaching out and grabbing the sleeve of my blouse, holding on like she was a little girl again. "Grandma, don't go," she sobbed. They led me to the door. I looked back at my children, my beautiful, terrified children, at Michael, trying so hard to be the man of the house, at Liv, her heart breaking right in front of me, and at Ava, who had turned all her fury on her mother. She stood right in front of Cynthia, her small body trembling. "I hate you," she screamed, the words ripping from her throat. "I will hate you forever for this." Cynthia didn't even flinch. I was put in the back of the car. I watched my house, my life, get smaller and smaller through the rear window until it was gone. And as the heavy oak door of the Sunrise Meadows Care Facility clicked shut behind me, I felt something inside me break. That door didn't just lock me in, it locked my grandchildren out. It locked out my garden, my home, my life. I was alone, trapped by the lies of my own flesh and blood. Have you ever felt so utterly powerless, so betrayed that you couldn't even breathe? Let me know in the comments below. Your stories, your voices, they remind me that I'm not truly alone in this white, silent room. Echoes from the attic. In here, time moves differently. It's measured in trays of bland food and the squeak of the nurse's shoes in the hallway. My only real clock is the visits from my grandchildren. They come 3 times a week, 45 minutes each. A nurse with tired eyes always sits in the corner, a silent observer, making sure I don't get too agitated. We talk in code. Almost, our real conversation happens in the spaces between words, in the way Michael squeezes my hand, in the fierce look in Ava's eyes. They are my lifeline, they are my hope, and they are my warriors. After the first week of shock, Michael told me they had a plan. He said it in a low voice while Liv distracted the nurse by asking about the wilting carnations on the windowsill. "We're not letting her win, Grandma," he whispered, his eyes dark and serious. "We're going to find the truth." While Michael started the impossible task of finding a lawyer who would listen, Liv and Ava went to war in the one place Cynthia would never think to look. The attic. Liv described it to me later, her voice a murmur across the small visitors' table. The pull-down stairs groaned in protest. The air that hit them was thick and still, smelling of old wood, dust, and forgotten time. A single, bare light bulb cast long, dancing shadows over a lifetime of stored-away things. Old furniture draped in white sheets like sleeping giants. Stacks of holiday decorations. And boxes. So many boxes, we didn't even know where to start. Liv told me. Ava. My practical Ava had an idea. She ignored the things that were labeled. She looked for the things that were hidden, tucked away in a dark corner. Under a leaky spot in the roof was an old trunk that had belonged to my own mother. Inside, amongst faded tablecloths and bundles of my husband's old letters, was a shoebox. A simple, cardboard shoebox for a pair of sneakers. Its lid soft with age. It had no label. Their hearts were pounding. Liv said. They lifted the lid. The first things they saw were the photographs. A small, messy stack of them. They weren't the smiling school pictures I had framed on the mantelpiece. No. These were the pictures I took the week Cynthia left. The pictures I had hidden away because looking at them felt like a failure. Liv's voice broke when she described them. A picture of Michael, 7 years old, in worn-out sneakers with a hole in the toe, his expression wary and old for his age. A picture of 5-year-old Liv, her hair a tangled mess, a smudge of what looked like dried ketchup on her cheek, and a picture of little Ava, barely 3, her diaper heavy and sagging beneath a faded t-shirt. They were the faces of children who were waiting for a mother who wasn't coming back. Beneath the photos was a bundle of letters, tied with a brittle rubber band. The handwriting was unmistakable. Cynthia's looping, dramatic script from when she was younger. They were addressed to me. I remember those letters. They arrived like little paper cuts to the heart in the months after she left. I never showed them to the children. I couldn't. Liv read parts of them to me in a whisper, her eyes full of tears. The first one, postmarked from a town in Florida I'd never heard of, talked about a man she'd met, a new start. She called it. She asked me to keep the kids just a little longer. The second letter was colder. The man, Javier, he didn't want a ready-made family. She wrote. He wanted a clean break, a new life. And then came the line that made Liv stop reading, her breath catching in her throat. Cynthia had written that her new life, this wonderful new future, didn't have room for old burdens. Burdens, my Michael, my Liv, my Ava. She had called them burdens, but it was Ava, my little firecracker, who found the weapon that mattered in the modern world. While Liv was sifting through the ghosts of the past, Ava was hunting in the present. She sat at the kitchen table for hours, her face illuminated by the glow of her laptop. She told me she used public records websites, social media breadcrumbs, things I don't fully understand. She wasn't looking for emotion. She was looking for facts. And she found them. She found out that Cynthia Blackwood, she'd taken her new husband's name, was in serious financial trouble. There were public records of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. And then, the final, damning piece. A pre-foreclosure notice on a small house in a town 2 counties over. They were about to lose everything. Michael explained it to me on his next visit, his voice low and hard. It was never about them. Grandma, it was never about you. He paused, and I saw a muscle tighten in his jaw. It's about the house. Your house. It all clicked into place. A terrible, ugly puzzle. My home. The place where I had raised her children. The only real asset I had in the world. It wasn't a home to her. It was an asset. A solution. A payday. She wasn't just trying to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. She was trying to erase my entire existence. Sell it off piece by piece, and use the money to patch the holes in the new life she had chosen over them. In that cold white room, a different feeling started to burn away the fog of despair. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was rage. A slow, quiet rage. The kind a mother feels when someone threatens her young. And I knew, right then, that this was not over. My mind might have its cracks, its forgotten corners, but my heart was still whole, and it was ready for a fight. The reluctant lawyer. In this place, time moves differently. The days bleed into one another, marked only by the rattle of the meal cart and the changing shifts of the nurses. My only connection to the outside world, to the fight, was Michael. He visited every chance he got, his face etched with a worry that made him look 10 years older. He was trying so hard to be strong for all of us, but I could see the weight of it all pressing down on his young shoulders. He told me about the lawyers. The first few were from fancy offices downtown. The kind you see on billboards. They had leather chairs and offered him bottled water. They listened to his story, their faces professional and polite. Then they would talk about retainers, about fees, about sums of money that were as foreign to us as a distant planet. We didn't have that kind of money. We were a family of home-cooked meals and carefully managed budgets, not legal funds. One of them patted Michael on the shoulder and told him these cases were notoriously difficult. Another suggested we try to reason with Cynthia. Reason. As if reason had anything to do with this. Michael left each of those offices feeling smaller, more helpless. The system, he told me, felt like a great big machine, and we were just a piece of grit caught in its gears. I could hear the despair in his voice, and it scared me more than these white walls did. A boy of 22 shouldn't have to carry the world like that. He should be worrying about his job, about taking a girl out on a date, not about fighting his own mother to free his grandmother. Then, someone, a kind woman at our church, gave him a name. Not a firm, just a name. Mr. David Chen. She said he ran a small legal aid office over on the east side of town, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. She said he was tired, close to retirement, but that he was an honest man. The office was on the second floor of a worn-out brick building, above a laundromat. Michael told me the stairs creaked and the air smelled faintly of dust and old paper. There was no receptionist, just a hand-painted sign on the door that said, Chen and Associates. Though there were no associates, just Mr. Chen. He was a small, neat man with wire-rimmed glasses and a head of thick, graying hair. His desk was a chaotic mountain of files and law books. When Michael walked in, Mr. Chen didn't even look up from his papers. If you're here about a slip and fall, I'm not interested, he said, his voice gravelly. No, sir, Michael said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. It's about my grandmother, Clara Thorne. Mr. Chen finally looked up, his eyes sharp and intelligent behind his glasses. He motioned to the rickety wooden chair across from his desk. Michael sat, and then he told him everything, the whole story, from the day Cynthia left, to the day she came back, to the day they took me away. Mr. Chen listened without interruption. He steepled his fingers, his face unreadable. When Michael finished, the old lawyer leaned back in his chair, making it groan in protest. Kidnapping, dementia, emergency guardianship, he sighed. I long. Weary sound. This sounds messy, son. Very messy. These family disputes, they're the worst. There's no real winning. I'm not trying to win, Michael said, and his voice, when he told me this part, was filled with a quiet strength that made my old heart ache with pride. I'm just trying to bring my grandmother home. Your mother has doctor's reports, a court order. What do you have, mister? Chen asked, his tone skeptical. That's when Michael took out the folder. It wasn't a fancy leather briefcase. It was a worn-out cardboard folder from the dollar store. Inside was everything the girls had found. He laid the first picture on the desk, a faded photograph of a 7-year-old him, his shirt torn, his eyes too big for his face. Then one of Liv, her hair a tangled mess, and little Ava in a sagging diaper. Mr. Chen picked up the photos, holding them carefully by the edges. He didn't say anything. Then Michael took out the letters. My sister Grace found these, he explained, in a box on the attic. They're from Cynthia, from the first few months after she left. Mr. Chen put on his reading glasses and began to read. Michael said he watched the man's face change. The professional weariness began to fade, replaced by something else, a focused intensity. He read about Javier Dawson, the new man. He read about the new life in a new city, the life that had no room for 3 small children. He read the part where Cynthia called them baggage from the past. He put the letters down and looked at Michael. He looked at the pictures. He looked at the letters again. She wrote this, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir, Michael said. And Ava, my youngest sister, she found this. Michael handed him the printouts from Ava's research, the credit card debt, the foreclosure notice on a house in another state, the clear, undeniable motive. Mr. Chen was silent for a long time. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. The office was quiet. The only sound the distant hum of the dryers from the laundromat below. "Your grandmother," he finally said, his voice softer now. "Is she a strong woman?" "She's the strongest person I know," Michael answered without a moment's hesitation. Mr. Chen nodded slowly. He looked around his cluttered office, at the stacks of files representing years of other people's troubles. For a moment, Michael thought he was going to say no, that it was too much, too messy. But then the old lawyer looked Michael straight in the eye. The weariness was gone. In its place was a spark, a flicker of the fighter he must have been in his youth. "All right, son," he said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward him. "Tell me everything again, from the very beginning. Don't leave out a single detail." Ghosts in the courtroom. The day of the hearing, they let me wear my own clothes, a simple navy blue dress, the one I always wore to church on Easter Sunday. It felt strange against my skin after weeks of wearing the thin, shapeless gowns they give you at the facility. Michael had brought it for me. Holding it felt like holding a piece of my old life, a life that felt a million miles away. The courtroom was cold, not just the air, but the feeling of it, the polished wood, the high ceiling, the stern-faced judge who looked at me over the top of his glasses. It was all designed to make a person feel small, insignificant. And it was working. I sat beside Mr. Chen at our table. Behind me, I could feel the presence of my grandchildren, a warmth at my back. I didn't dare turn around to look at them. I was afraid if I saw their faces, I would shatter into 1,000 pieces right there on the cold, tiled floor. Cynthia sat at the other table with her lawyer, a slick-looking man in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She was dressed in a simple gray dress, no makeup. She looked diminished, sad. It was a masterful performance. Her lawyer started first. He spoke in a smooth, confident voice. He painted a picture of a devoted daughter, Cynthia, who had returned home only to find her beloved mother, me, lost in a fog of dementia. A mother, he said, who had grown paranoid and unstable. Then came Cynthia's turn to speak. She walked to the stand, her steps slow, hesitant. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I love my mother," she began, her voice thick with unshed tears. "More than anything, for years, I had my own struggles. I wasn't the daughter I should have been, and I will live with that regret for the rest of my life." She paused, taking a shaky breath. The courtroom was silent. When I finally came home, I was hoping to make things right. But I found that Mama wasn't herself anymore. She was confused. She had invented this terrible story about me abandoning the children. She finally let a tear fall. A single, perfect drop that rolled down her cheek. She doesn't remember that I asked her to help for just a few weeks while I got treatment. She doesn't remember how she slowly cut me off from them. It breaks my heart. But I can't stand by and watch her endanger herself, or the children. I felt a coldness spread through my veins. It was a lie, a beautiful, carefully crafted lie, told with such conviction that for a terrifying second, even I almost believed it. I looked over at the judge. He was listening intently, his expression unreadable. Then came the videos. They set up a large screen in the courtroom. Cynthia's lawyer dimmed the lights, and there I was, a distorted, monstrous version of myself. The videos were short, choppy. There was a clip of me on the porch, squinting in the sun, unable to remember the name of Cynthia's third-grade teacher. The video was edited to make me look lost, bewildered. They cut out the part where I knew Cynthia was recording me. There was another clip, this one in the kitchen. It was the day I'd snapped at Liv for asking about the stove. They had only recorded my sharp reply, "I didn't," making me sound aggressive, angry. They cut out the part where Liv had told me Cynthia had put the idea in her head. And the worst one, a clip of me in my bedroom, frantically searching for my bank card. My hair was a mess. My voice was high-pitched with panic. "I can't find it. It's gone." I looked frantic, unhinged. They cut out the part where Cynthia calmly walked in and pulled it from my jewelry box, the place I knew I had never put it. Clip after clip. They built their ghost, a portrait of a confused, angry, Paranoid old woman. I sat there and watched this stranger on the screen, this caricature of me. And I felt myself shrinking in my chair. Is that what they all saw? Is that who I was now? Mr. Chen objected. Of course. Your Honor, this is clearly edited footage, taken out of context. But Cynthia's lawyer was ready. The context, Your Honor, is a daughter's desperate attempt to document her mother's tragic decline. Then they called their expert, a doctor, a so-called specialist in geriatric cognitive disorders. He had never met me, never spoken to me, but he had reviewed the videos. He spoke in calm, clinical terms about memory loss, paranoia, confabulation, a condition where a person creates false memories without the intent to deceive. In my professional opinion, he concluded, looking at the judge with grave seriousness, the patient, Clara Thorne, exhibits significant signs of cognitive decline consistent with dementia. Her narrative about her daughter could very well be a confabulation, a story her mind has created to fill in the gaps of her memory. A story, my life's greatest sacrifice, my deepest love, reduced to a symptom, a medical term. Mr. Chen did his best. He tried to cross-examine the doctor, pointing out that he had never even performed an evaluation on me. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted in the judge's mind. I could feel the shift in the room. The air grew heavier. I risked a glance at my grandchildren. Michael's face was pale, his jaw set like stone. Liv was crying silently, her shoulders shaking. And Ava was staring at Cynthia with a look of pure, undiluted hatred. I felt a wave of despair wash over me, a helplessness so profound it was hard to breathe. We had the letters, we had the financial records, but what were those pieces of paper against this powerful, emotional performance? They had taken my own memories, my own moments of weakness, and twisted them into a weapon to destroy me. The judge looked at the clock on the wall. He declared a short recess. As he stood up, his eyes met mine for a brief moment. There was no sympathy there, only a cool, professional assessment, the look a person gives to a problem that needs to be solved. And I knew, in that moment, that he was beginning to believe her. He was beginning to believe the ghost on the screen was the real me. Memory is the only weapon. After Cynthia's lawyer finished, a heavy silence settled over the courtroom. I felt small, erased. The woman they had described on the stand, this confused, delusional, dangerous old woman, it wasn't me, but they had said it with such confidence, with papers and videos to prove it. I looked over at the judge. His face was a mask of professional neutrality, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. He was starting to believe them. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. Then, Mr. Chen stood up. The defense calls Michael Thorne to the stand. My boy. He walked to the witness stand, his back straight, his jaw set. He looked so much like his grandfather in that moment. He placed his hand on the Bible and spoke his oath in a clear, steady voice. He told them about his childhood, not the twisted version Cynthia had painted, but the truth. He spoke of coming home from school to the smell of my baking, of me staying up late to help him with his math homework, of how I was the only face he saw in the crowd at his high school graduation. He never raised his voice. He just told his truth. Cynthia's lawyer tried to trip him up. Mr. Thorne, isn't it true that your grandmother sometimes forgets things? That she seems confused? My grandmother is 71 years old, Michael said, his voice level. Sometimes she forgets where she put her keys. She doesn't forget who we are. She never has. Then came Liv, my sweet, gentle Olivia. She was so nervous her hands were trembling. But she walked up there anyway. She spoke in a soft voice, telling the court about how I taught her to paint, how we'd spend hours in the garden together. She told them how Cynthia had tried to turn her against me, whispering about how sick I was. My grandmother isn't sick, Liv said, tears welling in her eyes but her voice firm. She's just sad. Because my mother came back and broke her heart. Ava was last, my firecracker. She walked to the stand with her chin held high, and she stared directly at Cynthia as she took her oath. She was pure fire. She told the court about Cynthia's lies, about her false concern. She didn't cry. She was too angry for tears. That woman, she said, pointing a finger at Cynthia, is not my mother. My mother is the one who raised us. My mother is Clara Thorne. I sat there, listening to my children, my heart swelling with a fierce, painful pride. They were my legacy. They were my truth. Then, Mr. Chen said the words I had been dreading. The defense calls Clara Thorne. My knees felt weak as I stood. Every eye in the room was on me. I felt like an exhibit. The confused old woman. I sat in the witness chair, the wood hard and cold beneath me. Mr. Chen was kind. He asked me simple questions about my life, about raising the children. But then came the cross-examination. Cynthia's lawyer stood up. He was a shark. He smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. He started small. Mrs. Thorne, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Oatmeal, I whispered. And the morning before that? I don't recall. You don't recall. He raised an eyebrow. He moved on. What is the name of the head nurse at Sunrise Meadows? I hesitated. I think it's Brenda. You think it's Brenda? You're not sure, he pressed. Mrs. Thorne, do you remember what you ate for lunch last Tuesday? He was trying to paint the picture. The one Cynthia had created. A woman whose mind was a sieve. I could feel the trap closing around me. I felt my hands begin to tremble. I looked at my children, at their anxious faces. I saw the triumphant smirk on Cynthia's face. And then, something inside me snapped. The fear, the humiliation, it all burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I looked the lawyer straight in the eye. My voice, when it came out, was no longer a whisper. It was steady. It was clear. No. I said, I don't remember what I ate for lunch last Tuesday. I paused. The courtroom was silent, but I remember the navy blue dress my daughter was wearing on the day she left 3 children on my doorstep. It had little white buttons. I remember the smell of rain in Michael's hair when I hugged him. I remember the dry tear tracks on Olivia's cheeks. Memory isn't about numbers on a calendar. Sir, memory is the scars on your heart. The lawyer was taken aback. He stammered for a moment. Mrs. Thorne, let's talk about the day you were admitted to the facility. Your daughter testified she was crying, that she was heartbroken. My daughter did not shed a single tear. I said, my voice cutting through the silence. She stood by the door while I was led away. She pulled out her phone. I saw her reflection in the glass of the storm door. She was texting someone. A frown on her face because things were taking longer than she had planned. That is not the face of heartbreak. Sir, that is the face of impatience. I turned my head and looked directly at the judge. The doubt in his eyes was gone. He was listening now. Everyone was listening. My memory might have holes in it. I said, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I possessed. I might forget a name or a date, but I do not forget love. I do not forget betrayal. And I will not sit here and let my life, the life I built with my own 2 hands for my grandchildren, be erased by lies. I looked over at Cynthia. The smirk was gone. Her face was pale. For the first time, she looked afraid. In that silent courtroom, for the first time in weeks. I wasn't a patient. I wasn't a case number. I was Clara Thorne, a grandmother fighting for her life and for the children who are her world. The fight is not over, but a flicker of hope has been lit in the darkest of places. If you are still listening to my story, if you are still here with me, please help me by commenting the fight below, just the number 1. So I know that I have friends walking this journey with me. Your presence is the greatest encouragement for me to tell the final part of this story. The unraveling of truth. After my testimony, the air in the courtroom felt different. It was still tense, but there was a new current running through it, a current of doubt. Aimed directly at Cynthia's table, the judge's face, which had been a mask of professional neutrality, now held a flicker of something else. Interest. Real interest. He looked from me to Cynthia, then back again, as if seeing us both for the very first time. Mr. Chen stood up. His movements were slow, deliberate. He wasn't a flashy lawyer, but there was a quiet strength about him, the steadiness of an old tree. Your Honor, he said, his voice calm and clear. The petitioner, Ms. Blackwood, has painted a compelling picture of a mother in decline, but a picture is not the same thing as the truth. Now, I would like to present some items that belong not to a story, but to reality. He walked to the clerk and submitted a small stack of papers. They were copies of the letters from the shoebox in the attic. The judge put on his reading glasses and began to read. I watched his expression change. The neutrality hardened into something sharp. Stern, Mr. Chen, the judge said, looking up. Please read the highlighted portion of Exhibit A for the court. Mr. Chen picked up his copy. He adjusted his glasses. His voice filled the silent room. Mama, he read. I know this is hard, but I've met someone. His name is Javier. We're moving to Florida to start over. I need a clean break. I need you to keep the kids just a little longer until I'm settled. That was the power of the Badawires. That, the partly, that the Mattis instated. He paused, then moved to the next letter. Mama, he read again, his voice a little louder this time. Javier is a good man, but he doesn't want a ready-made family. He wants our life to be our own. For this to work, I can't bring old burdens into our new future. A lot of that was a very fad berry and other prevented burdens. The word hung in the air. I saw Michael, sitting behind me, clench his fists. I saw Liv close her eyes, a single tear escaping. The judge looked directly at Cynthia. Her face had gone pale, a chalky white beneath her carefully applied foundation. Objection, her lawyer said weakly. My client was suffering from severe postpartum depression. These letters were written under duress that allowed her to move to another state and start a new relationship. Mr. Chen asked quietly, without even looking at him. He didn't need to. He was speaking to the judge, to the truth. He then submitted the next set of documents, the ones Ava had found. The credit card statements showing thousands of dollars in debt. The official, undeniable pre-foreclosure notice on a house in Marietta. It seems, Your Honor, Mr. Chen said, his voice laced with a gentle irony, that Ms. Blackwood's return was not just prompted by a sudden wave of maternal concern, but also by a looming financial crisis. A crisis for which her mother's home, a home she hasn't set foot in for 13 years, would be a very convenient solution. Cynthia was shaking her head, whispering frantically to her lawyer. He was patting her hand, but his own confident smirk had vanished. He looked worried. I have one final witness. Your Honor, Mr. Chen announced. The defense calls Mrs. Dolores Franklin. A woman I hadn't seen in years stood up from the back of the courtroom. Dolores, my old neighbor from 2 houses down. She had moved away 5, maybe 6 years ago. She was older now, her hair completely white, but her back was still ramrod straight. She walked to the stand with a look of grim determination on her face. Mr. Chen asked her simple questions. Did she know me? Yes. For over 20 years. Did she know my daughter? Cynthia, yes. Mrs. Franklin. Mr. Chen said, do you recall the day? 13 years ago, when Cynthia brought her children to my client's home. I do, Dolores said, her voice surprisingly strong. I remember it clear as day. I was on my porch, watering my petunias. I saw the taxi pull up. I saw Cynthia rush those 3 babies up the steps. And what did you observe about the children? They were a mess. Poor things, Dolores said, shaking her head. Dirty clothes. The little one was crying something awful. Michael, the boy, he just stood there, looking lost, like a little soldier waiting for orders. And what did you observe about Cynthia? She gave them each a quick kiss, like you'd kiss a letter before you mail it. No hug, no long goodbye. Then she turned and practically ran back to that taxi, never even looked back. Dolores looked directly at the judge. That wasn't a mother asking for temporary help. Your Honor, that was a woman running away from a fire. That was it, the final brick. The carefully constructed wall of lies that Cynthia had built around herself began to crumble. She's lying, Cynthia suddenly shrieked, jumping to her feet. Her voice was high-pitched, ugly. The mask of the sad, devoted daughter was gone. She's an old busybody. She doesn't know anything. You're all against me. Her lawyer tried to quiet her, putting a hand on her arm. Cynthia, sit down. She shook him off, her face twisted with rage and panic. No, it's my mother. She turned them against me. She stole my children, and now she's trying to steal my life. The judge banged his gavel. Once. Twice. Miss Blackwood, control yourself, or I will have you removed from this courtroom. But she couldn't stop. The performance was over. The carefully rehearsed script was forgotten. All that was left was the raw, desperate truth of her. A truth that was greedy and selfish and full of rage. I looked at my daughter, my child, and I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Just a deep, hollow sadness. The kind of sadness that settles in your bones and stays there forever. The fight was over. The truth was out. And all I could see was the wreckage she had made of us all. The verdict and a whisper in the silence. After Mr. Chen presented the last of his evidence, the foreclosure notice, the angry letter from a credit card company, a deep, heavy silence fell over the courtroom once more. But this silence was different. It wasn't the silence of doubt. It was the silence of truth settling in, hard and undeniable. Cynthia sat shrunken in her chair, her lawyer shuffling papers with no real purpose. The fight had gone out of them. The judge looked at the documents. He looked at Cynthia, then he looked at me. He took a long, slow breath. In the matter of the guardianship of Clara Thorne, he began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. This court finds the petition filed by Ms. Cynthia Blackwood to be not only without merit, but to be a malicious and calculated act of elder abuse and attempted fraud. The words hit me. Elder abuse. Fraud. I had just thought of it as my daughter being cruel. Hearing the law put a name to it, it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The judge wasn't finished. The petition for guardianship is dismissed with prejudice, meaning it can never be filed again. All rights and freedoms of Mrs. Clara Thorne are hereby fully restored. Restored. A simple word for giving a person back her own life. Furthermore, the judge continued, his gaze now fixed on Cynthia with a cold fire. This court is referring this entire case to the district attorney's office for investigation into potential criminal charges of perjury and financial exploitation of the elderly. And a permanent restraining order is now in effect. Ms. Blackwood, you are to have no contact, none whatsoever, with your mother or your children. A small sound escaped Cynthia's lips. A gasp. A sob. The sound of a world ending. The judge struck his gavel. The sound was clean. Final. It was over. For a moment, I just sat there. I couldn't move. I felt the tension of the past few months. The fear. The anger. Just drain out of me. It left me feeling hollowed out. Empty. But clean. Then they were there. Michael. Liv. Ava. They rushed to me. All three of them at once. Their arms wrapped around me, holding me up. Michael's strong embrace. Liv's tear-streaked cheek pressed against mine. Ava's fierce, protective grip. I buried my face in their shoulders and breathed in the smell of them. The smell of home. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt safe. Mr. Chen came over and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. It's done. Plata, he said, his voice soft. You can go home now. We walked out of the courtroom together. A small, battered but unbroken family. The hallway was mostly empty. The sounds of the courthouse were muffled, distant. We were in our own little bubble of relief, but as we neared the main doors, a figure stepped out from a small alcove. It was Cynthia. Her lawyer was gone. She was alone. Her face was a wreck, her expensive makeup streaked with tears. She looked lost, like a child who had wandered away from her mother in a crowded store. My children tensed around me. Michael stepping slightly in front of me again. A human shield. Mama, Cynthia whispered. Her voice was raw, broken. I stopped. The children stopped with me. Please, she said, taking a hesitant step forward. Just 1 minute. I looked at Michael. He shook his head. A silent warning. But I put a hand on his arm. It's all right, honey, I said. Just for a minute. He didn't like it. But he stepped back, keeping the girls with him, giving us a few feet of space. Cynthia stood before me, twisting the strap of her purse in her hands. She wouldn't look me in the eye. She just stared at the worn tiles on the floor. They're going to charge me," she said, her voice barely audible. I could go to jail." I didn't say anything. What was there to say? It was the truth. The consequences of her own choices were finally catching up to her. She finally looked up, her eyes pleading. They were the same eyes that had looked up at me when she was 5 and had broken my favorite vase. "Mama, can you ever forgive me?" The question hung in the quiet hallway. Forgive her. I thought of the white walls. I thought of the fear in my grandchildren's eyes. I thought of the woman I had become in that place, doubtful, afraid, a stranger to myself. Forgiveness felt like a mountain too high to climb. It felt impossible. But then I looked at her, at this broken woman who was my daughter, and I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound, bottomless sadness. Sadness for her. Sadness for the little girl she used to be. Sadness for the mother I had failed to teach what truly matters. I reached out and put my hand on her arm. Her muscles flinched under my touch. "Your forgiveness isn't the important thing right now, Cynthia," I said, my voice tired but steady. "What's important is whether you can learn to live with what you've done. Whether you can find a way to forgive yourself." I let my hand drop. "Go on now, Cynthia," I said softly. "Go and try to be a better person." I turned away from her then. I didn't look back. I put my arms around Liv and Ava, and with Michael's hand on my back, I walked toward the glass doors, toward the sunshine and the open air. I walked away from the ghost of the daughter I once had, and toward the future I had with the children who had saved me. And so, Clara Thorne's story, for now, comes to a close. A story of love, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to hold a family together when the world tries to tear it apart. What do you think of Clara's final decision in that empty hallway? Would you have done anything differently if you were in her shoes? Please, share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly do read every single one. Your perspectives bring these stories to life in ways I could never imagine. If this story made you think, or made you feel, please don't forget to leave a like. Share it with someone who you think would be moved by it. And of course, subscribe to Deepu Cater Stories and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter we explore together. I'll see you in the next story, and who knows, maybe next time it will be about you.